Atypical femur fractures. This is from the OTA Core Curriculum Resident Lecture Series version 5. Slides are by Dr. Bennett Butler, and I'm Saqib Rahman narrating. This is our second and final video in this slide deck. In the first video, we talked about definitions, risk factors, why atypical femur fractures occur, how to recognize them, and diagnosis. So we're going to talk more now about treatment and surgical considerations and outcomes. So typically these are treated with intramedullary nail stabilization. You may need to also address these medically. So you may need to get an endocrinology consultation, or certainly have a conversation with the physician who is managing bisphosphonates, if that's what the medication is that the patient is using, and you'll need to discontinue that. You may need to consider vitamin D and calcium supplementation, and if the patient still needs medical treatment for osteoporosis, they may have to switch to a different type of agent that's not inhibiting osteoclasts, maybe something like teriparatide. If the patient has an incomplete atypical femur fracture, so let's say you diagnose it early, or there's a complete fracture, and then you look at the contralateral side and you find an incomplete or developing fracture. So then what do you do? A lot of studies here referenced here. We'll show at the end of the video. If there's no radiolucent line, a lot of times these can heal, but if there is a radiolucent line, there is only 22% union with non-op management. In the second study, they showed with, again, radiolucent line, high risk of non-union. In the third study, incomplete atypical femur fractures were treated with prophylactic nailing, and these were all found to heal, but if you didn't operate on them, many went on to non-union. So you're seeing different rates, but substantial risk of non-union. In the last study, they recommended prophylactic fixation of the contralateral femur. If you had these, it was found to be cost-effective in high-risk patients. And we talked about what puts you at risk in the first video. Some of those are Asian race that have a little bit predisposition to bowing of the femur, prodromal pain, varus proximal femur, femoral bowing, and of course beaking or radiolucent line. What if you have a lower risk patient? So you could consider an initial course of non-operative management with protected weight bearing, and then addressing the medical side of it, possibly with endocrine consult or whoever's prescribing the bisphosphonates, to consider alternative medications. In higher risk patients, an incomplete fracture, you probably should treat with prophylactic nailing. So as a surgeon, you should have a low threshold for prophylactic fixation. So you do have to look for these. So certainly if you're the surgeon and you're only encountering the patient once they come in with a complete fracture, look at the contralateral side. If they have a lesion that clearly meets criteria, perhaps the patient will even tell you that they've had some pain on that side. You should seriously consider prophylactic fixation during that hospitalization, because of the high rates of non-union and progression to a complete atypical femur fracture with non-op management. So because of the nature of the bone, with the beaking, the bowing, etc., there are some difficulties with managing these. I mean, we said we're just going to fix them with a nail. Sometimes it's not that simple. So if you have, say, substantial anterolateral femoral bowing, sometimes the nail doesn't fit well. Now, we said that that's a risk factor to get these. So when you see an atypical femur fracture, there's a higher probability that you're dealing with someone who has femoral bowing than with your average patient. So when you see these fractures, you're going to have to think that, is there bowing, and template your nail, make sure it looks like it's going to fit. So this can lead to poor nail fit, malreduction, perforation through the cortex distally. Also, the localized lateral cortical thickening can deflect the nail medially. We will show this in another slide, creating malreduction. Also, it could be just hard to pass your reamers, for instance, because of narrowing of the canal. If they have osteoporosis in general, that can also cause issues, which is typical with most of these proximal femur fractures in the geriatric population anyway. But keep in mind, these are going to heal slower. They've had impaired bone remodeling from prolonged osteoclast inhibition, for example, in the bisphosphonated population. So these fractures heal very slowly. So make sure you have something that's going to be able to withstand a lot of stress for a longer period of time than normal. So because of the bowing, make sure you have a nail that is the smallest possible radius of curvature that can accommodate that. You may also find that you may need to use that bowing to your advantage. That is the bowing of the radius of curvature, I should say, of your rod to accommodate to the anatomy. So for example, here's a nice example showing that you may need to externally rotate the nail from what you can see here. There's a very bowed femur, and if you try to just put a straight nail in, you can see how it's going to be a problem. So of course you put in a nail with a radius of curvature to help accommodate this. But we don't have every radius of curvature out there. Not everybody has the ability to sort of take an intramedullary nail and add a bow to it. That's very difficult. But what you can do sometimes, if you use in this case, you can see they've used a nail, and maybe it's not as obvious, but they've done a little bit of external rotation of the nail to accommodate for this bowing. So for example, normally your femoral nail has an anterior bowing. Well, if you externally rotate the nail, you can get that bowing to be anterolaterally and accommodate for patients' bowed femur. So consider externally rotating the nail a little bit if needed, and just keep in mind when you do that where your interlocking screws are going to be and your proximal locking screws. You may have to medialize the start point to avoid varus malreduction. I mean, that's going to be done often with subtrochanteric femurs anyway. You may need to use blocking screws more frequently. And you just have to carefully advance the nail, especially when you have bowing, to make sure they don't perforate anteriorly, distally. Sometimes you may have to consider plating because a nail is just not going to be possible due to the anatomy. So be prepared so that you don't get caught off guard in the middle of a case and realize you can't pass the nail after you've done all the instrumentation and everything. So pre-op plan, look at your x-rays, template if you have to, and make sure your rod is actually going to fit, and have a plan to plate this with the appropriate implants that are going to be able to sit there for the duration. Remember, these fractures take longer to heal, so make sure you have a construct that's going to be able to hang in there until this heals. So this is that other comment we talked about. When you get that beaking, remember there's also this endosteal thickening as well, and you see this on the x-ray. So what happens is that you have a sort of a narrowed space here, and what happens is this, when you instrument, this can deflect here and cause the rod to sort of head into this direction by bouncing off of this here. So very medial start point. You may have to also consider additional or perhaps a T-handle reamers or something to sort of open that up a little bit. We talked about blocking screws also, but don't allow yourself to get deflected medially and cause a varus malreduction. So you may need to use the awl or sort of a T-handle or rigid reamer to get through that lateral cortical thickening. You may need to also do additional measures to make sure you don't end up in varus. Here you can see a unicortical Schanz pin, ball spike pusher to sort of make sure that you're not only reaming medially. And you can really see, that thickening right there, and osteal thickening in addition to the cortical beaking. So you may also have to get that guide wire pulled laterally. Here you can see there's actually, through the fracture site, they've used a bone hook to pull the reamer laterally to make sure that they're reaming laterally in addition to just falling medially. You may, in some instances, even have to go in and burr down the cortex a little bit, but in most cases you won't have to do that. So Remember, these are going to take a long time to heal, so use multiple interlocking screws if you need to, blocking screws to increase the longevity of your construct. Consider using screws up into the femoral head to protect against a potential femoral neck fracture. Not sure if these are cases where you have to treat it like a non-union and also do bone grafting or a pulse, ultrasound or BMPs, for example. But some authors have suggested that these are cases that take a long time to heal. They're insufficiency fractures to begin with. It's pathological. I mean, there's been impaired bone remodeling, and you may need to treat these a little bit like a non-union. That hasn't really been proven yet, but there's some rationale behind that. Needless to say, at least you have to counsel your patients that these have high rates of delayed union, non-union, reoperation, and several studies have borne this out. So in summary, atypical femur fractures are low energy femoral shaft fractures with a characteristic appearance. It's caused by a combination of unfavorable femoral anatomy, varus, bowing, and impaired bone healing and remodeling, which is frequently, but not always, associated with bisphosphonate use and osteoclast inhibition. Successful treatment requires a combination of medical and surgical management. We've talked about that. Remember, there's high rates of delayed and non-union compared with standard femoral shaft fractures, and the disease process is often bilateral. So you got to check and monitor the contralateral side. So if you're a surgeon, you see a hip fracture, you recognize, oh, this is an atypical femur fracture, and we got to think about all these risks of non-union and lateral, and the osteal thickening, and we're not going to get varus. Just don't forget the contralateral side, and make sure that you don't miss a developing atypical femur fracture and potentially need to treat that as well. Here are the references. These were pointed out throughout both videos. Thank you.